Hello, this is day 19, and I don't have so much a story today as I'm going to tell you how I became a bad alcoholic. So what the situation was I lived in a terrible house. It was just bug-infested, nasty. I didn't even know it was as bad as it was. I had an awful roommate. He was like morbidly obese, and every day he pissed all over the toilet, all over the floor. There was like a puddle on the floor every day in the bathroom. Just some random dude that I happened to, he was my roommate. But I found this place on Craigslist, and there were like black widow spiders in that place. I killed so many gnats. I killed dozens of flies. I flushed at least 2 large beetles. There were just lots of bugs in the place. So I really hated being at home. I signed the lease for 5 months, and I was like, man, I hate living here. My roommate is just... he was awful. He was a food addict, and he was like in debt, $14,000, and he was morbidly obese. Literally, he developed cancer while I lived with him in that 5-month span. And after he developed cancer and started going to chemo, he started being a nice guy. But I mean, even when he went to chemo, that was kind of bad because his hair was falling out. See, before he had long hair, and it was always in the drain. And every time I would take a shower, there was a bunch of hair in the drain, and I would always have to pull it out. And well, when he had to start doing chemo, he shaved his head, but with the chemo, made his hair fall out, so it was even worse. There was still hair everywhere, all over the bathroom. Plus, the dude could not piss in the toilet. I found shit on the floor one time. It was like 3 feet away from the toilet. There was like this little piece of shit on the floor. And I was like, that cannot be shit. And I got down there and I smelled it. It smelled exactly like shit. I was like, oh man, I gotta clean this up because I know he wasn't going to. But every day, there was piss on the floor all over the toilet. It was just, he would stay up until 5 in the morning and he would have his stereo cranked up playing Modern Warfare 2. And it was just like, like shaking the walls. I could not sleep living with this dude. And it was just right on the other side of this paper-thin wall that he would sit there all night playing Modern Warfare 2 online. So anyway, terrible roommate, terrible living situation. The house was dirty. I didn't really notice how dirty it was, but I could not have guessed how many bugs there were at this place. There was like a gap this big underneath the door, so bugs just came right in. And the downstairs neighbors actually caught a pregnant black widow spider, and they had it in a little cage. And then they didn't know it was pregnant until all the little babies started crawling out of the holes and they were trying to smash all of them. And I was like, my downstairs neighbors captured a black widow spider in the house. Awful place to live. It was the worst place I've ever lived. I can imagine it would only be worse if I lived under a bridge. And I was paying hundreds of dollars to rent this place. Anyhow, I hated being at home. So I always went to the nearest bar, which was 0.8 of a mile away. And I would get plastered drunk so I could come home and just pass out, because my landlord didn't like people to be drunk at the house. He didn't even want you to have people stay over at the house, like maybe once a week. So, awful place to live. The landlord was not a nice guy. I was really surprised that he gave me back most of my deposit, even though I stained the carpet. Like I spilled some Coke on the foot of a metal desk and it rusted a little bit. So anyway, that is how I became an alcoholic. I fucking hated being at home. I always went to the bar and got drunk, came home, passed out, went to work, came home, changed my clothes, went to the bar again because I could not stand being at home. So that's my story of how I became a bad alcoholic.